ask you something. Why do most people play video games? Well, it's usually because they want to be entertained, want to escape from the perpetuality of realism, or just straight up bored. Out of all of those reasons listed, the one I find myself going to the most is that I want to be entertained. And most games do give me that to a certain degree. As long as I'm being entertained, I will enjoy the game to a certain extent, no matter what anyone else says. But sometimes, even when I'm having a great time and enjoying myself, I find aspects in certain video games that make me become pissed off beyond belief. It is when these moments show up that I almost instantly take a disliking to that segment of the game, or sometimes even the entire game as a whole. So, since I've encountered so damn many of these moments, I decided to make a list surrounding them. Now you're probably saying to yourselves, hey, didn't both Logan and CJ make their own versions of this list? Well, yes, they have. But since I'm such a copying hack, I decided to make this list because of it. No, but really. None of the segments on this list correspond with ones on either of those lists, so I can give my own opinions about what I personally dislike. So, remember something. There are no rules for this list. Yup, that's right. I'm letting my full force of rage go through here. And if you know me, you know I have lots of rage to let loose. Nothing is safe from exception on this list. Anything that I've encountered that I just find hateable can be on here. But just to have one cheery thing in this video before the anger, here's me saying something very happy.
I like cake. It's very delicious.
Alright, there's your happiness in this video. That enough for you? Good. Here comes the raging crap storm. So, with all of that in mind, let's begin, shall we? Nintendo is a company that most gamers have come to inherently love. Over time, they've cemented themselves into gaming culture, both by ending the video game crash of 1983 with the NES, and also by introducing us to some of the world's best ever popular series. In fact, most of the games that Nintendo has put out over the years have started their descent into glory on the NES. One such series is The Legend of Zelda. Over time, the Zelda series has put out some of the best games that I've honestly ever played. And after going back to play Skyward Sword, I have to say, it's not very different there. Yeah, okay, I know that I ranted about how much I hate this game back in a previous countdown, and pretty much called it the worst Zelda game in the series. Well, I'll be honest with you guys. I hadn't actually played it in a while, and I have to say that my problems with the combat and controls overall most likely came from the fact that when I first played the game, I had my sensor bar in an extremely inconvenient position. But once I actually got a new TV and tried playing it on there, I found that most of my problems with the game disappeared. Except for the bosses, that one personally still irks me for some reason. But, since most of the problems with this game had mostly gone away, you could probably expect that there would still be something in this game that I found really annoying. And you would be right. Even though I now see the game in a whole new light and can actually appreciate it better, the one thing I still found very dislikable all around was your companion and guide of the game, Fi. I personally find Fi's biggest problem to be her design choices. She will constantly spit out pointless information that you honestly could already detect. Okay, I'm fighting some enemies. Things are going great. I've almost defeated them so I can finally get to my next dungeon. Oh damn it, I'm down to a couple hearts. Ugh, and now it's making that obnoxious beeping noise. Oh look, Fi has something to say. I'm sure it'll be super helpful advice about a strategy on how to destroy these enemies. Or maybe even better, she'll tell me where to get some more hearts. Alright, let's see what she has to say. Thanks, Fi. That's so damn helpful. Fi herself also seems to have a really hateable personality. She's like Hooters McPointless over here. But a fairy! Just like Hooters, she will constantly give you pointless information about where you need to go or what your next objective is right after someone else has just told you the same thing. Oh, and don't even get me started on her voice. It's like if you combined a baby with Simlish. Fi's attitude also seemed like it could have really used a recheck. She's a robot. I don't know any other way to say it. She simply is, in every aspect of the word, a robot. She calls you master, she'll make calculations, she'll tell you probabilities, and she will always be as lifeless as a robot. Navi may have been bad, but at least she had any personality at all. The only way I ever get satisfaction from Fee is when she allows me to perform the Goddess Strike, which is actually a pretty helpful move. Not only that, but sometimes I like to think that just a tiny piece of Fee is getting shot out, and slowly by slowly, it's killing and destroying her. Uh-oh, was that out loud? But even when you think there's a chance where Fee will be the slightest bit helpful, she blows it off. All she really seems to care about is making Link's and the players' lives miserable. In fact, the only reason that Fee is any higher is the fact that Fee's departure at the end of the game got me to care about her, even if it only was for about 3 minutes. Maybe she isn't as bad as I thought. Maybe it's something more than I'm thinking about. As I talked about in an earlier countdown, I don't really care that much for the fighting genre of gaming. It seems so monotonous. Every single entry and pretty much all of them seem like the same game, and it just doesn't do it for me gameplay-wise. But if you might remember, I also said that there are some exceptions to that claim. Quite a few of them, in fact. One example of this is the relatively recent Mortal Kombat 9. There are honestly lots of things in this game that could be eligible for the list, such as Ermac, the Challenge Tower, or how some of the plot elements in this game seem to be pretty nonsensical and thrown in at the last minute. But I'm getting off topic. One of the reasons that I love Mortal Kombat is because of its fluent gameplay. There are actually some pretty strategic moves you can pull off, and the developers always seem to make the combat interesting in some way in all of the games. The way they pulled this off in Mortal Kombat 9 was the inclusion of X-ray moves, which were all very flashy and entertaining to watch, and they just seem to add to the deep layer of strategy that this game has set itself up for. So how about if they make a boss battle that used none of that? Now, before you go jumping down my throat for this, let me tell you something. I'm not talking about the arcade mode of Shao Kahn. That one is fine. If anything, I think it's one of the more entertaining arcade final bosses out of all of the Mortal Kombat games because it does seem to follow all of the rules that a good final boss needs to. No. I'm talking about the final boss of the campaign. Yeah, you guys know the one. The boss that we all spent hours on and remember being a huge challenge at all difficulties? Yeah, that one. Throughout the entire game, you've pretty much been told that Shao Kahn was going to succeed in the merging of Earthrealm if Raiden did not stop it. That everything would be destroyed, that everyone would fall. So, in the entire game, he tries to do everything in his power to stop it from coming. Unfortunately, he fails completely at it, and everyone except Sonya, Johnny, and Raiden are killed. So, Shao Kahn beats Raiden to the point of near death until the other gods give Raiden power to defeat him. Because of this, I thought going in that it was going to be an extremely easy boss because with the power of the spirit gods, Raiden would be invincible and all-powerful and would be able to kill Shao Kahn in a few fell swoops. Oh my god, how I was wrong. Shao Kahn is the cheapest boss in the entirety of the game. He will constantly spam his moves over and over again to the point of near insanity. Your X-ray moves also have zero effect on him. They did on everyone else, and even in a previous boss fight with him, but not here. His fight also reaches extraordinary levels of cheat, with Kahn constantly spouting out little insults every time he hits you, and almost being invincible to every single one of your attacks, and will counterattack if you are not careful. And you would think it would be enough to have to kill him one time? No! You have to win against him in 2 rounds. This means that you basically cannot let yourself get hit from any of his attacks, because if your life gets down low enough and his is still relatively high, then there is 0 chance of your winning. And the thing that cements this fight onto the list is the fact that you had already fought Shao Kahn in an earlier fight where he was not nearly this hard. It just seems really cheap in my eyes. The BioShock series has always been known for its slow, intense combat, its completely shocking and what the hell type of moments, and of course, the horror aspects that really define it from all sorts of other games like it. Basically, everything that a game of its genre could do, it does right. So, when they announced that BioShock Infinite was going to be nothing like the predecessors, I was pretty skeptical. So skeptical, in fact, that I put off buying it and didn't feel like playing it. That was until my friend told me that it was one of the best games he'd literally ever played, and I finally cracked. I was a little worried it wouldn't live up to my expectations, but I bought it anyways. As soon as I started to play it, I instantly fell in love with it. BioShock Infinite really takes the expression video games are art and goes over the top with it. This game has so many great elements to it, such a gripping narrative, so many great characters. I just love it so much! Although you have to remember, no game is perfect, and BioShock Infinite is no different. It does have some flaws, most I didn't even realize until replaying the game. Although, there was nothing too big, and most of the things I could look past. Except for one little detail. The handyman. You actually first meet the handyman not in combat, but at the beginning of the game, where some sort of business people are giving a demonstration of him. Most players automatically assumed that you'd have to fight him somewhere down the line, and I was no different. This was confirmed when you were flagged as an outlaw and everyone in the city tries to kill you. But even if you were still the slightest bit skeptical, the game makes sure to let you know by having the handyman scare the shit out of you while you were trying to get to your next objective. But you don't actually fight him there. Oh no, that would be too easy and would make way too much sense. Instead, you randomly come out of a building and find one waiting for you. Once you see him, you are immediately thrust into battle with this huge hulking massive machine. Once you start fighting him, he can do many attacks, all which inflict major damage. The most annoying of his attacks is when he will electrocute the rail lines in the air, which is your primary way to get around in battle. Only one problem. Unlike most enemies in the game, he gives you no warning when he does this, so you have no way to see it coming unless you get very lucky. He's also able to shoot beams out of his hands, which deal massive damage upon you. And for being a huge robot, he sure does seem to be pretty damn mobile. What I mean by that is, just like you, he can ride on the railways in the air and go much faster than you. Because of this, it sometimes feels nearly impossible to get away from him, especially when you're just trying to find a health pack. Your vigors also deal about 0 damage on him, which makes it very hard to perform any sort of pattern on him and get him dead. And one of the worst parts about him is that if you like to play on higher difficulties, the only way to damage him at all is to hit him in the heart. But when he's going all over the place, that's very hard to do! This is especially bad because all times you fight one of them, there are swarms of enemies all over the place. So not only do you have to defeat him, you also have to manage to take care of all of the other enemies as well. Oh, and that's another thing. You don't just fight this guy once. No. You have to fight him not once, not twice, but 3 times. And you know what the kicker is? Every time you fight him, there's more people to deal with, and he gets stronger. So basically, you have to kick 3 of these guys' asses, all the while dealing with all sorts of little annoying enemies. Thank God the rest of the game wasn't like this. I don't know about anyone else in this matter, but I've always enjoyed stealth games and their layer of depth. They always seem to have a new mechanic every time one of the games in their respective series comes out, and most times are always really fun all around. And while there are some really popular stealth games that I enjoy, my favorite over the years has always proven to be a not so well known stealth game called Second Sight. Second Sight is a game that is very unique in terms of gameplay. It actually uses 2 main mechanics that I absolutely love. Those 2 mechanics are your paranormal powers and the sneaking and stealth system itself. In terms of your paranormal powers, you have a wide selection to choose from, and all of them are useful in their own right. The stealth also has various ways to experiment with it, and many unique places to try it out in. And I'm sure if you've ever played the game before, you would think you knew what made it onto the list. Those shooting segments, right? They were nothing like the rest of the game, the pacing of some of them was just downright awful, and it just wasn't a good time overall. Well, you'd be wrong. I personally like those segments and can debunk all of those complaints. Yes, it's true that they were nothing like the rest of the game, but it helped to break up the stealth segments and put something a little different in there. Sure, the pacing of some of them was pretty bad, but it wasn't the main part of the game, so I don't think pacing is what they were going for, and I actually thought that they went along pretty nicely. And honestly, I do think it was a good time, but that just may be my opinion. So, now that I've destroyed that idea, there's only one thing it could be. Welcome to one of my very first KillJoys. Okay, I know it might be a little cliche to put an escort mission segment on here, but I just couldn't resist. These segments were so awful, so boring, and so downright monotonous. It was ridiculous. But let me explain. The main character of the game, John Vadek, actually used to be in the army, where he learned all sorts of combat maneuvers and some survival tactics. Jane was another person in the same place as him. After a mission went wrong, John was put into prison, accused of killing a colonel, and Jane was put into a mental hospital, presumed insane. So, after John is able to escape, he automatically goes after Jane. Now, being the player, you of course didn't actually think that Jane was insane. She probably had just been falsely accused for aiding John. Well, joke's on you, because she actually did go insane. Because of this, she will constantly get spooked and need you to calm her down with a healing move, which drains some of the energy that you will need to use later. Jane unfortunately also has the habit that lots of escort mission NPCs have of being incredibly stupid. She will constantly walk head-on into enemy fire, getting herself and inevitably you killed. Jane's personality is also incredibly disturbing, even for a mental patient. For one reason or another, she will always find a way to babble on very sanely about John and that mission. It gets very pointless after a while because she does get semi-cured down the line, but she will still do all those things as if she was still insane. It just doesn't seem to make much sense to me. And even when she does become alright again, you still have to escort her around and trying to prevent her death. It's just so annoying. And honestly, that's my biggest problem here. In fact, when I was younger and first playing the game, I stopped playing because it was too problematic for me. Unfortunately, as I soon found out, there were dozens of games that used the same kind of thing. As a young butler, I was obsessed with the retro age of gaming. I knew almost every single thing there was to know, and because of it, I played a lot of older games in my earlier years. The primary company I went to when I was having the retro itch was Nintendo. I realized that there were so many different games that Nintendo had made before I was even born, some that are still praised today. One of those almighty games, as one might call it, was DuckTales. I was elated when I realized DuckTales had its own video game because I had been watching the show for years and was actually quite fond of it. So I got an emulator and started to play. And let me tell you, it was a great time. Capcom did so many great things in the game, so many that was hard to count. But as soon as I finished playing it, I was sad because it was a game so good, I didn't want it to ever end. For several years, the sadness clung to me until I forgot about it. Then my nostalgia bar had an overload explosion when DuckTales Remaster was announced at E3 to come out in a few months. I was shocked, and a bounty of memories flooded back to me. I got really excited, so when it was released on Steam, I purchased it and had a grand time. Some stages' music, such as The Moon, brought me to tears because I hadn't heard it in so long. But not all of the nostalgia was good, as I remember a stage I hadn't played in years, a stage that I had tried to forget about. The stage known as the Himalayas. You thought the Himalayas in the original DuckTales were bad? Well, they sure made to amp it up this time. One thing that I really liked about DuckTales Remastered was the fact that it was very story-driven. Don't get me wrong, the gameplay aspects were still there, it just has a lot more plot involved. Well, that didn't work out so well here. At the beginning of this level, Launchpad crashes his helicopter and loses the fuel regulator that actually makes the damn thing work. So, Scrooge goes off to look for it. Once you find it, a couple of rabbits come and chew it up, taking it to 3 places you have to find. That's right, this officially just became a fetch quest. Well, halfway through the level, you find Bubba, frozen in place. You free him, and he starts carving a path for you to get the final rabbit. Once you get all of the pieces, you go back to Launchpad, who gets you in the air, where you fly for about 5 seconds before Glumgold comes and starts shooting you with cannons and Beagle Boys. You have to hit the cannonballs back at him and jump on the Beagle Boys' heads here until Glumgold goes down. The only catch is that it's incredibly difficult. The number of times I fell off that damn plane and had to restart reached levels of ridiculousness. But you eventually take him down and reach the boss, which is the Yeti. And I won't lie, it's pretty fun. There is a pattern involved, and it is honestly one of the better bosses in the game. But right when you're about to finish it off, Webby comes in and tells you the whole reason that she, yes, the Yeti's a she, was even attacking you was because she stepped on something and hurt her foot. Scrooge goes under the snow and finds the crown he's been looking for. And after that, the level finally ends. When I say finally, I mean it. This is probably the longest stage in the entire game, and no matter how much I tell you about it, it won't do it justice. Tricky platforming, enemies with really difficult patterns, and you can't use your pogo stick. You know, your attack, unless you land right on the people you're trying to kill. This level is honestly just really frustrating. You know what's awesome? Parkour. You know what's even better? A video game about parkour. Through these two very in-depth analyses, you probably could assume that I would be talking about Mirror's Edge. This game has provided me with hours and hours of entertainment. The fast-paced gameplay, the fluent combat, and actually a decent story all come together for one big game with buckets of fun just oozing out. Almost every single thing in this game seems like it was designed well. The music is just about flawless, and hell, for 2008, this game looked damn good. But of course, EA couldn't make a perfect game. Why? Because they're EA, of course, and their mission as a company is to make the consumer suffer. Well, that one irksome aspect that EA seems to leave in all of their games came in the form of the Runner Hunters. Now I know what you're thinking, huh? Runner Hunters? What are those? Well, remember those things that chased you all around, wore black suits, and whose footsteps probably haunted your nightmares for days after? Yeah, that's a Runner Hunter. I just call them that because that's easier than saying that. Anyways, all of the things that I said earlier do apply. The Runner Hunters were introduced literally seconds after you learned that there's a program designed to hunt the runners. And I'm not exaggerating there. I mean literally as soon as it's told you, they start coming up an elevator. So, you obviously run out of the window and land on a building nearby. You start fleeing for your life until you start to hear some footsteps. Turn around and you'll see about a dozen of them running straight at you. Yes, that's right, these hunters can perform parkour just as good as you can, sometimes even better, and they are not afraid to show it. Usually, I would call this genius, as I actually adore chase enemies. But the way that they are designed is so game-crippling and unfair. The Runner Hunters will constantly show up in places that are literally made to be the most challenging. This means you are dealing with really bad platforming while running from your death. But if you try and engage even just one of them in hand-to-hand combat, you will get your ass handed to you, as they have no clear-cut way to defeat them, and will always pull off attacks that are so fast and so damaging that they can decimate you in just a couple of hits. Oh, and by the way, you better be running as fast as you can and not slow down for just one little second, or they'll catch up to you and swarm you with attacks from all directions. And if you actually manage to get away, there's a good chance that there will be a machine gun wielding maniac waiting for you when you turn the next corner. Oh yay! Why are your flaws so huge? How about I do something that I've never done before? I'll talk about a space shooter! But which one to choose? There's so many good ones. I know! I'll talk about Star Fox! Ah yeah! Star Fox is honestly one of the best space shooters that I've ever played. Its flaws may be many by today's standards, but there are still many things that I enjoy about this fantastic game. Well, for starters... What the hell is this? Star Fox Adventures? What? Wait a minute. I've heard of this game. It can't be. What is this horrible abomination of mankind? Nah, just kidding. Believe it or not, I'm actually quite fond of this game, as it was the one that introduced me to the series and got me to fall in love with Fox McCloud and his trusted crew. In fact, when I first played Star Fox 64, I hated it because I didn't know it was the classic format and had gotten used to the on-ground segments more than anything. But I eventually did come to my senses and realized that Star Fox 64 was the far superior game. It simply has more to offer, and I think is one of the better N64 games. I mean, sure, Star Fox Adventures is a Zelda clone, but at least it's a good Zelda clone. Although, maybe it could have taken a page out of Zelda's book and not had any vehicles. Now, this is one that is very personal to me. This race was the bane of my very existence for several months. Yes, you heard me right. I was stuck on this part of the game alone for months. This race opens with a cinematic of Tricky, your companion later on in the game, getting sent down from a flying ship. After he is lowered, some shark claw chase him into a cave where they presumably start to hit him. Fox sprints in just to have Tricky take off running and have the shark claw get on the speeders from Return of the Jedi? Okay then. And since there's one left, Fox hops on and begins pursuit. As soon as the race starts, you will find one of the biggest problems with this race. And that's it. you would automatically assume that this was simply a race that you had to win and would be evenly matched. Well, too bad! This is a race in some right, as you do have to win. Although it's very different from your traditional race in the fact that you can ram into your opponents to utterly destroy them. Oh wait, did I say can? Well, let me rephrase that. You have to ram into your opponents. If you do not kill your shark claw buddies off by the near end of the race, then it is an impossibility for you to win. You need to destroy them or they will win, and you will just keep repeating the race over and over and over again! It's also incredibly in favor of the shark claws, as they are programmed to know various shortcuts that you would not instantly know about until it is too late. And even crashing into them is incredibly hard, as they will always be faster than you no matter what you do. You can try cheat codes, you can try to abuse glitches in the game's design, or you can even try to win, but they will always have some sort of advantage over you. Oh, and after you finally win after all that trial and error, after memorizing the shortcuts, you get an ungrateful, idiotic, annoying as hell sidekick. It's basically like having Slippy, but always being with you and constantly talking. God, I hate Snowhead! One thing that almost every single game ever made has implemented in some way is its difficulty. I can guarantee you that there are not two games out there that have the same ups and downs of difficulty, and as such, many different games seem to want to provide a different level of challenge. This can be good if you look at it one way, because it makes all games different, and so if you ever want to go back and play it again, you can have a whole new experience. Ergo, many games are based on how big or small the developers decide the difficulty spike should be. But in some cases, they take it to the extreme and put in so many obstacles that it makes the game an unfair, unplayable, and most of all, an unfun experience. But most times, when the creators of the game do decide to make it unnecessarily hard, there's usually some sort of learning curve that you can master after just a bit of practice. But even if this is true on most occasions, that does not stop the exceptions. Which particular unpleasantry am I speaking of? 3 words are all that I need to use to describe this monster of a game. Motherfucking Dark Souls. This game is so cheap, so completely unfair, and so balls-tastically difficult, it at times can be quite ridiculous. This game is a monstrous pit stain on the name of this company, and I personally believe that it's one of the biggest pieces of shit.
John, focus!
I can't! This game is just so damn frustrating!
Okay, I'll help you this, just calm the hell down.
Yeah, I guess.
Okay then, Duck.
John, you son of a bitch.
What?
How dare you talk about something so incredibly rage-inducing and not invite me or Logan?
Well, I was going to, but...
But what?
I hadn't actually thought about it.
Fine, I'll forgive you, but I want in on this.
Okay, sounds good. Shall we?
Yes, we shall. Dark Souls is one of those kinds of games. You know what I mean. That one game that we try so hard, but we just can't get very far into it.
But Dark Souls is a special case. Here, it's not the player's fault every time they die. In fact, most times it's due to complete and utter bullshit like skeletons at the beginning of the game doing just about as much damage as enemies near the end of a usual game would. Yeah, that's right, fucking skeletons. Oh, but if you think that's the worst of it, you're in for one hell of a rude awakening.
One of the best examples of this can actually be found at the dead start of the game. You've barely had any time to get accustomed to the admittedly awkward control scheme, and BAM! You're thrown into your first boss battle where 2 hits of his extremely long-range weapon send you back to a previous save point.
And guess what? That save point is about half a mile away from the entrance to the boss's lair. With about 5 dozen enemies blocking your path, of course. And not to mention that the enemies themselves are already difficult enough as it is in their own right, so that when you actually reach the boss itself, you have just about 0 life left and can be killed with one giant hammer swingy of his.
The game also prides itself on being extremely confusing to play. Want to sell something? Want to learn where to go next? Want to learn how to even friggin' equip? Well, good luck, because you'll have to go through about 15 menus to get to any of those things. Also, that one menu that we all want in a game like this, you know, the pause button? Yeah, that's completely missing. So I hope that you don't have to answer the phone or go to the bathroom at any point in this game, because there's a solid chance you'll be in the middle of something and won't be able to do fuck about it unless you want to go back to a previous save point.
But there's one place that this game thrives in, which is the customization. There are literally hundreds upon thousands of different things you can do to make your character look unique. But oh wait, that's right, as soon as you actually start the game, you are transformed into an undead ghoul, which means any time you put into creating your character is wasted.
And while it is true that you can recover your character by collecting humanity, it is a slow, tedious process which takes place throughout the entirety of the game. So basically you have to beat this game if you want to get your character back. But then the game restarts, inevitably throwing all that hard work down the sensor.
There is one thing that you can do to actually make the game a little easier on yourself. There's an online mode, which allows your friends to join in at any time and help you throughout your journey. But this comes with a serious problem.
The game has several parts where you are able to pick up treasure, and armor, and things of nature to make things a little easier on yourself. Well, unfortunately, the game itself does not come with a built-in rationing system, so it leaves you arguing with your friends, which is fun.
Not to mention, the online mode is completely broken, making it hard to even connect with your friends, and on the off chance that you actually do get into a game with them, it came with an untold amount of glitches, bugs, and graphical issues. Oh, and did I mention that if you've been playing the game and you've gotten farther than your friends, you will either be dragged to an earlier point of the game, or they will come farther into your game unprepared and get themselves, and inevitably you, killed in the process.
Oh, and the boss battles, if you can even call them that, are just plain awful. Just when you thought it would calm down for a little bit after you get out of the undead asylum, you go through a swarm of enemies, all just about as hard as the boss you just fought in the asylum, just to come upon a dragon. That's right, you heard me. 15 fucking minutes after you fought the last battle, you fight a dragon, which makes the monster from the asylum seem like Queen Goma in comparison.
Oh, and don't even try to kill any NPCs in this game. Do not! They might look harmless and actually kind of peaceful, but they are actually bloodthirsty murderers. If they manage to kill you and you come back into that town, you'd expect to get another chance. Of course, it just makes too much sense, which is precisely why it isn't so.
But if you set off the people in the towns, then come back after death, they will remember and continue to attempting to murder you. Huh? And at most times when you do pass through towns, it's plot driven, so if you attack anyone, you will be unable to continue the game. Hurrah! Thus making you restart the whole thing, yes!
And if you've noticed that we're mentioning that a lot, it's because most of the game plays out like that. You go into a place unprepared, get your ass handed to you on a silver platter, inevitably die, and have to try the whole thing over again.
Some might call it generous for the game to even let you restart near a save point in the first place, but we don't think so. A game should not be driven by luck like this. Luck-based events are already annoying enough as it is, but when an entire game is solely based around luck, it takes any enjoyment you could have possibly had and smashes it with a hammer!
Now I think it's a little unfair of us if we didn't mention that Dark Souls is actually a spiritual successor to the game Demon Souls, which had the same kind of concept of being incredibly difficult, but it was much different there. Like most actually fair games of its caliber, Demon Souls slowly and gradually got harder over time and eased you into the insane difficulty that came later in the game. Dark Souls, however, is as if it threw you into the much later parts of Demon Souls at the beginning of the game with no warning whatsoever.
Well, at least since there's only one game in the series, we only had to play through this monstrosity once.
Actually, Dark Souls 2 was just confirmed for release in 2014, along with Just Dance 2015, and we're all going to have to suffer through all of this probably more again and again and again!
What?
Yeah, you didn't know?
No. I didn't.
Cordy guy, what you doing?
What do you think?
Sally, get down! Oh my god!
Oh god. What have I done? There's only one way I can fix this.
Cordy guy, no! It's not worth it!
Goodbye.
Oh my god! Cordy guy! Sally! They're both dead! Oh my god!
You know, the fact that I've only talked about Shadow of the Colossus once in my worst countdown horrifies me. It was such an expertly crafted game with so many innovations, it can sometimes be shocking. It is very rarely that we as gamers get such an enthralling experience, with so much done right and so little done wrong. But of course, even some of the finest works of art have at least one flaw. And unfortunately to say, Shadow of the Colossus is no different. And even as great as the game is, its one flaw is so rage-inducing that it warrants the number 2 spot. At the very end of the game, the main character Wander is turned into an infant for having slain the 16 Colossi to resurrect his dead girlfriend. But who, you may ask, is responsible for all of it? None other than the god of douches himself, Dorman. The very fact that this character exists sickens me. Seriously, when exactly down the line did one of those game developers decide to put Dorman in? Nearly the entire game is plagued by his presence. Well, at least to me. At the beginning of the game, Wander is promised that his dead girlfriend will be revived, but at one big cost. He must destroy 16 hulking colossi before this can happen. So, Wander goes out and starts to destroy them. But as you go along, you start questioning your motives. These are mostly just peaceful creatures trying to live their lives, and a majority of them don't even attack you until provoked. Also, the finishing blow, all the Colossus go into him, rendering him unconscious. As you get to the final Colossi, Malice, Wander has lost everything. His horse aggro just fell to its death. Over time he doesn't seem to care much anymore, and his girlfriend still remains dead. The final boss is an amazing experience, with Wander and the player reflecting on just what it is they've done, and what it is they're still doing. As you take Malice down, Wander is barely able to make it back to the temple, where it turns out that Dorman has been deceiving you. All of the Colossus actually held a seal on Dorman, keeping him imprisoned. After Wander broke the seal, it allowed Dorman to possess Wander's body, prompting the captain to kill Wander. He opens up a holy door to seal the Dorman-Wander hybrid back into the prison he was in, and as it starts to work, Wander sees something infuriating. His girlfriend is still dead. You control Wander here as he desperately tries to reach his girlfriend, but it's all for naught. After it's all over, Dorman sorta keeps his promise. He does indeed resurrect Wander's girlfriend, but totally cock-blocks the two of them by turning Wander into an infant. What the hell, man? You cock-blocked me! With his deceiving nature, his life-destroying possession, and his cock-blocking, is it honestly any wonder that he is at number 2? It's completely deserved. You know, even though indie games oftentimes aren't very professional and don't even come close to real games in terms of quality, I can't help but love them. I mean, this is a lot better than the Calls of Duty, and that's honestly good enough for me. And while the companies who design these games never become as well known as companies like Nintendo, sometimes they actually impress me far more than Nintendo. But the thing that I love most about indie games is that they really seem to emulate that feeling of the 8-bit era, with the notion of it's so challenging, it's fun. But which game captures this best? It would be none other than the bloody incarnation of the meat god, Super Meat Boy. This game! Oh, this game! I personally think... No. You know what? No! I'm sick and tired of building things up. Because honestly, you already know what I'm talking about. Even if you haven't actually played Super Meat Boy, there's a very good chance that you've at least heard of this monstrosity from somewhere. Just show the clip. Why, Team Meat? Why? How could you do this to us? Your loyal customers! Oh well. Little Horn is honestly nothing but Simon Says. It is the same pattern every time you play it. And so you just have to keep fighting him over and over and over and over and over again until you know the pattern in your sleep. Speaking of sleep, you will have none until you beat this boss, because you will want to beat it so badly, it will keep you up at night. Little Horn is also a complete kick in the balls, considering that the world leading up to him, hell, actually wasn't that difficult by the game's standards. Huh, I just realized how ironic that is. Little Horn's design is also very unsavory, and actually sort of symbolic. Basically, Little Horn is a giant version of Meat Boy who is out for your blood. It is symbolic in the way that Meat Boy seems to be killing himself. How is that symbolic, you ask? It clearly depicts what you will feel after fighting him! He will always be the haunting in this game for me. The conclusion of the fight is also unsatisfactory and completely ridiculous. To keep with the pattern of the rest of the game, Team Meat tries to make you feel sorrow that you've just killed Little Horn, and make you feel that he was only trying to hurt you because it was what Dr. Fetus demanded. But honestly, I couldn't give two shits about that! This is a horrible boss battle, a harsh difficulty curve, and overall, a giant pit stain on the name of Super Meat Boy. You know, the type of pit stain, when you're out on a date and you took too many showers so you start to sweat. That kind of pit stain. I hate you, Little Horn. You and your pathetic boss.
I'm the Black Butler, and if you'll excuse me, I got 2 dead bodies you gotta go take care of.
Still alive, bitches!